I'm Detective James, and this is the cases the news forgot.
The signal wasn't supposed to exist. That's what made it impossible to ignore. I was 56 when I first heard it, sitting alone in my office late at night, the way I always do when sleep refuses to cooperate. I keep an old shortwave radio on the shelf behind my desk. Habit, from an earlier case. I don't turn it on often. That night, I don't remember turning it on at all, but suddenly the room filled with static. Not the soft kind, not background noise. This was sharp, intentional, like something clearing its throat. Then the numbers began. A woman's voice. Calm, measured, no accent I could place. She counted slowly. Not random, structured, groups of 4, long pauses between sequences. It was the kind of transmission intelligence agencies used to send Cold War relics, numbers, stations, except every known one had been shut down decades ago. And the frequency I was hearing? Officially dead since 1987. I wrote the numbers down without knowing why. Old instinct. When you don't understand something, you document it. When the broadcast ended, the radio clicked itself off. No fade, no static, just silence. The next morning, I ran the frequency through every database I still had access to. Nothing. Decommissioned, abandoned. Inactive beyond recovery, according to federal records. That should have been the end of it. It wasn't. That night, the signal returned. Same time, same voice, different numbers. This time, something else came through underneath the counting. Very faint, like wind moving through wood, or chanting carried across a long distance. I adjusted the dial carefully. The numbers stopped. The chanting didn't. I took the radio with me the next day and drove west. Something about the cadence felt familiar in a way I couldn't explain. I reached out to an old contact, a cultural liaison who worked with tribal councils in the region. I played him the recording. He went very quiet. Then he asked me a question I didn't expect. "Where did you hear this?" I told him. He shook his head slowly and said, "That voice doesn't belong on a radio." He told me the rhythm beneath the numbers matched an old ceremonial pattern used by his people. Not for prayer, but for warning. A call meant to be heard from a distance when something had crossed where it shouldn't. He told me there was a place where sound didn't behave properly, where voices were said to travel without mouths, where ancestors spoke through wind, stone, and fire. The elders stopped talking about it when radio towers were built nearby. Too many signals in the air, too much noise. Until now, the land sat miles from the nearest town, high desert stretching into low mountains, red earth broken by scrub and silence. An abandoned transmission tower stood there, rusted and leaning, like it had been waiting longer than anyone realized. No power lines, no generator, nothing that should have allowed a signal to broadcast. Yet my radio came alive the moment I stepped out of the car. The numbers began again. But this time, the voice said something else first. My name. Not spoken cleanly, drawn out, bent slightly, like it had passed through something before reaching me. The liaison refused to come closer. He told me some signals aren't meant for everyone. Some are meant for whoever is listening when the land decides to speak. He said his grandmother used to warn about voices that counted instead of spoke. Voices that measured time differently. Voices that didn't care if you understood, only that you heard. As the sun dropped behind the mountains, the chanting grew louder, not coming from the radio anymore, from the air itself, from the ground beneath my boots. And for the first time since this started, I realized the numbers weren't coordinates. They were dates, past ones, future ones, and one that hadn't happened yet. The first thing the elders asked me was not what I'd heard, it was when. Time matters in their stories. Not the clock kind, the other kind, the kind that bends when something old stirs. I played them the recording inside a small community hall built decades ago, its walls lined with photographs of people who had learned to listen to the land before learning to speak over it. The woman's voice came through the radio again. Calm, exact, counting. No one interrupted. No one whispered. When it ended, an elderly man sitting closest to the window closed his eyes and said, "It started walking again." They told me the signal wasn't born with radios. Radios were just the latest way it learned to travel. Long before towers, the counting came through drums, through sticks struck against stone, through patterns of footsteps during night ceremonies meant to keep something asleep. They said the land remembers promises, and this one was broken. The numbers, according to them, were not messages meant to be decoded. They were markers, tallies, the way hunters once counted days between migrations, the way storytellers measured time between losses. Each sequence marked a crossing, a moment when something moved from one side of the world to the other. I asked what crossed. No one answered directly. Instead, they told me about the disappearances. People who walked out into the desert and never came back. Radio technicians in the 1950s who swore they heard voices calling their childhood names through dead equipment. A young boy in the 70s who vanished near the tower site, his footprints ending abruptly in hard rock. No signs of struggle, no remains, just absence. Every disappearance matched a sequence in the broadcast logs I'd pulled. Not just dates, times, exact minutes. The elders said the counting was never meant to be heard by everyone, only by watchers. People chosen by circumstance, not lineage. People who noticed patterns others ignored. When radios became common, the signal started leaking, being heard by the wrong ears. That's when the elders worked with federal agencies to shut the frequency down. Not because it was dangerous, because it was hungry. That night, the signal changed again. The numbers slowed. The pauses stretched longer, as if the voice was waiting for something. My radio hissed even when turned off. When I stepped outside, the air vibrated faintly, like distant chanting just beneath hearing. I checked the latest sequence against recent reports. One of the times matched the present minute. The liaison told me that was bad. Very bad. It meant the signal was no longer recording. It was counted live. We drove out toward the old tower just before dawn. The closer we got, the clearer the transmission became, not louder, but sharper, like the land itself was amplifying it. The tower stood crooked against the sky, cables hanging loose, no power source in sight. Yet the ground beneath it was warm. I placed my hand on the rusted metal. The radio screamed, not static, voices, many of them. Overlapping, some chanting, some crying, some counting alongside the woman, offbeat, desperate to keep up. I stumbled back. The liaison pulled me away, his face pale. He said the signal didn't broadcast outward. It called inward. It drew things across boundaries when they were thin. He said the elders believed the tower was built on a crossing point, a place where sound, thought, and memory bled together. Radios didn't create the signal. They just gave it permission. That's when the voice said something new. Not a number, a phrase, spoken in a language older than English, but clear in meaning anyway. It is time to answer. The ground vibrated under our feet. The radio fell silent. And somewhere in the distance, something moved that shouldn't have been able to hear us at all. After the phrase came through the radio, nobody spoke for a long time. The desert went unnaturally quiet. No wind, no birds. Even the hum you usually hear when your ears adjust to silence was gone. It felt like the land itself was waiting for a response and growing impatient that it hadn't received one yet. The elders told us to leave the tower site before nightfall. They said the signal was strongest when the sun went down, when the boundary between listening and being listened to thinned. One of them said something I couldn't shake. When it starts counting people instead of time, someone always goes missing. I asked what he meant. He told me the numbers used to mark crossings long ago weren't dates at all. They were tallies, counts of those who failed to turn back when they were warned. Counts of voices taken into the land so the land could speak again through them. The counting wasn't communication. It was inventory. That night, the radio didn't wait for a specific time. It turned on the moment the sun disappeared behind the ridge. The woman's voice returned, but it sounded closer now. Less filtered, less distant. She counted slowly, deliberately. Between numbers, I heard breathing, human, nervous, like someone standing too close to a microphone. Then something new happened. After the count ended, the voice said a name. Not mine. Someone else in the room stiffened, an older man, one of the elders. He lowered his head without surprise. He said the signal had finally noticed who was listening. The radio crackled again. Another name, then another. Each one belonged to someone present. The liaison shut the radio off. The counting continued anyway. Not from the speaker. From the walls, from the floor, from inside my chest. I could feel the rhythm in my pulse, syncing itself to the cadence of the numbers. That's when I understood the elders' fear. The signal didn't need electricity anymore. It didn't need machines. It had been given attention. That was enough. They told me the story they'd kept buried. Long before radios, before maps, before treaties, there was a place where voices gathered, where the land absorbed the stories of those who crossed without permission. The counting was a way to keep balance, to make sure the living remembered that sound carries responsibility, that calling out into the world without listening first invites an answer. When towers were built, they amplified the calling without the listening. The land responded the only way it knew how, by answering. The disappearances weren't punishment, they were corrections. The signal didn't kill, it took. It folded voices into itself so the counting would never stop. I asked why I could hear it. One elder looked at me for a long time before answering. He said people who spend their lives listening for truth eventually become loud enough to be heard by things that were never meant to answer back. He said the signal recognizes watchers, record keepers, people who don't look away. That night, someone went missing. A young man who'd stepped outside to make a phone call. His phone was found on the ground, still connected, broadcasting static. No footprints, no struggle, just the echo of counting. Faintly recorded on his voicemail, the radio turned itself back on. The woman's voice resumed. The count was one number higher. I checked my notebook. New writing had appeared, not my handwriting this time. Sharper, older, written like someone who carved words instead of writing them. It said the signal was almost complete. That one final voice was needed to close the sequence. That if it finished counting without interruption, the crossing would remain open permanently. The liaison asked the question no one else would. Can it be stopped? The elders said yes, but only if the signal was answered the way it was meant to be. Not with machines, with memory, with truth, with someone willing to speak back instead of being counted. The radio crackled again, and this time, the voice said my name. Slowly, carefully, as if it had been saving it. I didn't answer the signal right away, not because I was afraid of what it would say, but because deep down, I already knew what it was asking. The elders noticed my hesitation immediately. One of them, his hair long and silver, tied loosely behind his neck, rested his palm against my upper back. Steady but firm, as if grounding me to the room itself. Listening, he said quietly, is not passive. When something speaks to you, you are already involved. They didn't prepare the space the way movies would have you believe. No exaggerated rituals, no dramatic gestures meant to impress. What they did instead felt older, heavier, like a memory the building itself remembered how to perform. One by one, every electronic device was shut off and removed. Phones powered down, recorders unplugged. Even the digital clock on the wall was covered. They explained that timekeeping interferes with listening. Counting minutes distracts from counting meaning. Only the radio remained. It sat in the center of the room on a woven blanket, its metal casing dull and scratched, the dial faintly warm even though it hadn't been touched in minutes. It wasn't making a sound now, but the silence around it felt crowded, like something was leaning in, waiting for permission. The elders told me the signal wasn't evil. That word, they said, was too simple, too convenient. Humans use it when they don't want responsibility. The signal was older than our categories, older than the borders we drew on maps. It didn't want worship, and it didn't want control. It wanted acknowledgement. Long before governments labeled the frequency dead, long before antennas and towers and call signs, the land itself had voices. Not metaphors, actual voices. Wind through stone, water under ice. Places where sound behaved differently, where echoes returned with memories attached. The elders said the counting began as a balance mechanism. When something was taken, game, water, land, life, something had to be returned. A name, a story, a song. Silence alone was never acceptable. But over time, people stopped returning anything. They extracted, recorded, archived, measured, and when the land spoke back instead of answering, we listened like thieves. We collected the sound without giving meaning. That's when the signal changed. That's when it learned from us. It learned patience. It learned repetition. It learned how to call not to villages, but to individuals. Lonely ones, curious ones, people trained to observe without intervening. People like me. They told me I wasn't chosen because I was special. I was chosen because I was practiced at distance. I'd built a career listening to stories without finishing them, broadcasting voices without staying long enough to see where they settled. The signal didn't want my expertise. It wanted my weight. They asked me to stand alone. No one touched me as I stepped toward the radio. The woven blanket beneath my feet felt warm, like it had been sitting in sunlight, though the room had no windows. When the elder turned the dial, the sound didn't fade in gradually. It snapped into clarity as if it had already been there, waiting behind a thin wall. No static, no distortion. The woman's voice came through immediately. Closer now, clearer, stripped of the chanting and numbers. The counting had stopped entirely. That absence was more unsettling than the sound ever had been. Silence can feel like permission, but this silence felt like expectation. She spoke again in that older language. I didn't understand the words, but understanding isn't always about translation. Meaning can arrive without grammar. What she was asking wasn't complex. She wanted to know if I would join the count, or if I would end it. My mouth felt dry. My hands trembled, not with fear, but with recognition. The elders hadn't told me what to say because there was nothing to recite. No correct answer. Only an honest one. I didn't give my name. Names, they had warned me, can be taken. Instead, I spoke the names of others. Every missing person whose case I had ever covered. Every voice I had recorded and then left behind once the story lost momentum. I spoke slowly, carefully. Each name like a stone placed back into a river. I didn't explain who they were. I didn't tell their stories. Explanation would have been for me, not for them. I acknowledged them. As I spoke, the air changed, not dramatically. No sudden wind, no flickering lights. But the room felt less tight, like something unclenched. The elders began to hum softly, not in unison, but in overlapping tones that never quite matched. They weren't amplifying the moment. They were supporting it, like hands beneath a fragile object. The ground vibrated once, not a shake, a breath. The radio hissed briefly, then the woman spoke again. This time it was English. "Do you remember us?" Her voice wasn't angry. It was tired. I said yes. The signal didn't resume counting. Instead, it changed texture. The tone dropped lower, slower, like something descending into rest rather than rising into urgency. The chanting returned, but it was different now. No longer summoning, no longer searching. It sounded like a lullaby sung to something vast and restless, finally allowed to sleep. The elders began a closing song. Not loud, not commanding, just steady. A sound meant to remind the land that it had been heard. The radio went silent. Not cut off, finished. Outside, the desert wind moved again, as if it had been waiting for permission. Somewhere far off, something metallic groaned and settled. Later that night, authorities found the missing young man, alive, disoriented. Sitting near a dry wash miles away, asking why people kept counting in his head. He couldn't remember where he'd been, only the feeling of standing in a place without edges, being asked to listen without responding. At dawn, the tower collapsed. Not violently, no explosion, no spectacle. It folded inward on itself, rust giving way quietly, like a structure that had fulfilled its purpose and no longer needed to stand. The frequency went dead again, but this time it wasn't sealed. It was released. Before I left, one of the elders spoke to me privately. He said signals like that don't disappear forever. They sleep. They quiet themselves when people remember how to listen properly. He said one day, when the world grows careless again, when voices are taken without gratitude, when names are consumed instead of carried, the counting may return. But it will sound different. I drove home without turning on the radio. Weeks later, against my better judgment, I checked the frequency one last time. Nothing, just static, real static, harmless, empty. But sometimes, late at night, when the house is completely still and the wind shifts just right, I swear there's a pause in the noise, a space where a number should be. If you ever hear something calling from a place that shouldn't have a voice, don't rush to understand it. Don't try to record it. Ask yourself why it's speaking at all. Some signals aren't meant to be decoded. They're meant to be answered. And some answers decide who gets counted next.